I think it's very important when we look ahead and particularly as we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, looking out to 2030, in framing those goals we need to think very much around the world that's going to exist at that time, whether that be the demographic challenge, whether that be the impact of climate change, whether that be the impact of the development of trading blocks, etc. And I think in looking at all those challenges, and particularly thinking about the sort of fiscal challenge that goes there, governments are going to come under greater pressure from their citizens to provide more timely services, better quality services, and more services on demand. And that's going to include a whole range of services, whether it be health or education, water, transport. Government's going to be under pressure to do that. People are living longer. More children are surviving through to adulthood, so you've got an ever larger population demanding more services. The private sector, I think, has an important role to play in that, because government is not going to have the resources from its tax base or from its ability to raise debt to meet many of the capital challenges that are required. So there's a need for the private sector to actually play its part as an investor, and if you look at Africa today, private sector investment flows are now already 5 times public investment, ODA, overseas development, official development assistance. And I think therefore the private sector's role is to mobilize capital, to invest, to create jobs, to create livelihoods, and to bring innovation to the developing world. I think one of the first things is, I think, an ability to think across national boundaries. I mean, many of the private sector firms that are involved in the development space are actually working on similar issues in different countries, so they can see solutions that work and they're not trying a solution for the first time. For example, we've been very heavily involved in development of public-private partnership legislation in a number of countries, ranging from Bangladesh to Mongolia to Vietnam to Malaysia. And in doing that, we're able to actually mobilize a knowledge of what works, what are the key elements, and how you can deal with them. Because obviously when you're working at a country level, you can't really afford to experiment with people's lives. So that's the first thing, really, that ability to actually mobilize knowledge of what works from one environment and bring it to another. Secondly is innovation. I think you've seen today at the conference with the various presentations that have taken place, how the private sector can actually take a different and novel view to a particular problem, whether that be a technical solution, whether it be a financial solution. And I think the final thing is the private sector's ability to actually think about how you actually program manage the delivery and get best efficiency out of programs. I think for the public sector to actually make PPP more effective, I think the public sector needs to have a very clear role of what it actually wants to achieve. PPP is not necessarily to be something to be actually looked upon just as a source of finance. Where that happens, the projects very often fail. I think you need to be very clear about what the purpose is of a particular program, what role government is going to play, what role the private sector is going to play, what the output of the program is designed to be, and that can be specified in technical terms or it could be specified in financial terms. So it could be usually on an output basis is the better way to go, and that then enables the government to be very clear about what it's doing. The problem, I think, in a lot of countries in actually doing that, of course, is that particularly where they're actually looking at creating the environment for public-private partnerships for the first time, the governments themselves don't have the capability or the understanding of the issue to actually do it. So we've been involved, for example, in Bangladesh, where we helped to actually set up the Infrastructure Investment Facilitation Centre in actually helping to build the capability of government to identify what were the key sectors where they wanted to involve the private sector, how they wanted to structure deals, how they wanted to protect the public good, where regulatory regime or regulatory authority was necessary, and then what the sort of shape and structure of the contract needed to look like to actually make sure that government was clear what its role was and it's clear what the role of the private sector provider was. I think the summit's been very useful because it's actually brought in a wide range of people really from around the world, and it's been able to bring together local, regional and global specialists. I was going to say experts, but I stopped myself because I think back to the sort of Mark Twain comment in his book where he was saying that an expert is only somebody from the next town who comes in to actually help you. So I think it's mobilised really sort of local, regional and global people. It's enabled people to share a perspective from a sort of strategic and a policy perspective of the water challenge and what needs to be done, really right the way through to practical solution-based approaches, whether it's actually taking a traditional solution of actually building treatment plants or infrastructure through to some of the more novel approaches such as the lifesaver approach, which actually looks at a very different and very innovative approach to dealing with water. I think one of the successes of the conference has been the ability to actually engage politicians through a series of ministers, people from the development community and also people working in the sector from around the region.